Okay, welcome everybody, and I would like to welcome you to another Thursday morning class on the Parsha of the week. We are titling this series Timely Torah to see if I can share something with you which is relevant, interesting, and connected to your life, and at the same time to see if we can do it in between 10 to 15 minutes. So let's go. What I'm first going to do is share the source sheet with you. So if you are viewing this through my Facebook Live page, I am adding the source sheet onto the feed. And there you go. So let's begin. This week's parasha is Lecha, and it is the great parasha of the beginning of Jewish time. Abraham and Sarah received the call, Lech Lecha, leave your land, go, travel, journey on. And we begin the period of Jewish history with the first two Jewish people. How did that begin? How did God choose Abraham and Sarah? What was special about them? What did they have? What did they do? Why did God choose them? That is our central question that we are going to look at today. And there are a variety of answers that are suggested to this. Fascinatingly, my Maimonides says that, actually I'm going to come to my Maimonides third. We have in certain, let's stick to the source sheet. Let's stick to the source sheet. There's a reason that I stuck to the source sheet. Text one on the source sheet. Let's take a look. Rabbi Levi said, in the name of Reish Lakish, Abraham recognized his creator when he was 3 years old. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Somehow or other, according to this first approach, Abraham figured it all out as a child prodigy. Remember, the world that Abraham lived in was already an idol-worshipping world. People had forgotten about God. People no longer were turning to God, did not believe in monotheism. Abraham grew up in a world of idolatry. According to Rabbi Levi, in the name of Reish Lakish, Abraham was a prodigy. He was a child genius. He was somebody that simply figured it all out. At the age of 3, that's very impressive. I have a nearly 3-year-old at home, and she's actually a smart cookie. She's figured out a lot. Has she figured out God? Has she figured out the complexity and the enormity of theology? As biased as I am, I don't think she's there yet. What does that mean for you and me? What does that mean for you and me? I think that would make us all feel horribly insecure, lacking, intellectually underdeveloped. I'm not there yet. I haven't figured it out. And yet Abraham had it all finished, polished, completely done at the age of 3. This is an incredibly challenging text because it tells us, on the one hand, Abraham was amazing. He was special. God chose him. He, as a child, already understood God. But at the same time, it puts you and I, or I'll speak personally, it puts me under the microscope and I come up lacking. Do I have a fully finished sense and appreciation at this point in my life of who and what God is? Absolutely not. Do I understand his ways? Do I have a deep and mature relationship with him? I'm not there. So this is a challenging and very difficult text. Amazingly, it's contrasted in the same midrash with Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. They actually disagree with Reish Lakish. Amar Rabbi Chanina, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Chanina said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Abraham was 48 years old when he recognized his maker. That's fascinating. What does that mean? Abraham was 48 years old when he recognized his maker. I think from this perspective, what we are being told is, in a very different way, that Abraham was building his understanding of God. It was not innate. It wasn't there from the very beginning. It wasn't something that was just as a prodigy, he figured it all out. It took him a lifetime of probing and thinking and experience and understanding to the point where he was ready to believe. And if you take a look at the language, he was 48 when he recognized his maker. What does recognized mean? I would like to understand that as began a journey of figuring out who God was. Remember, Lecha doesn't happen until he's 75. So even if you want to say that it was at 48, that's when he knew God, there was still a progression. What happened between 48 and 75 years of age? So at 48, a lifetime's work of experience, serious thought, consideration, then he understood or began a journey of understanding who God was. And maybe it took him another 27 years until God finally said, Lech, Lecha. It's fascinating. And I think between these two approaches is a fundamental question, and it was raised by Alex Israel, one of my teachers, Rabbi Alex, this week. Is faith innate or is faith acquired? And for a lot of people, I'll speak personally now, people will come to me and say, Rabbi, pray for me, or Rabbi, will you say a prayer, or you've got a closer line with God. I struggle with God. I don't believe. I can't really be a person of faith, but help me. And people feel guilty about this. People feel, somewhat awful, like as if they're a bad Jew, as if they are lacking, as if they are not doing something right. And there is this assumption, mistaken, absolutely, but a mistaken assumption. You've got to have a perfect faith. Everything has to be worked out. You have to know God's ways and interactions with this world, and you've got to have it down pat. And the younger, the better. And I think this midrash teaches us, especially in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, people take time to figure things out. And belief in God is actually no different than figuring out our own lives. Can you turn to a teenager and say, have you figured out your life yet? My God. Can you turn to somebody that is only entering puberty and say, have you figured it all out yet? Their world is just awash with craziness. Take a young 20-year-old that's still uncertain as to the path of their life and which job or career path they want to explore and go down. Take a middle-aged individual. Take the classic midlife crisis. Many people are figuring out their lives. And it takes, if you excuse the pun, a lifetime to figure out a life. And faith is exactly the same. And this is a very mistaken belief that people come to me with, saying almost gingerly, somewhat hesitantly, I don't really believe in God, excuse me, or I'm apologetic. Who says it has to all be clean, clear, and complete? The Midrash actually says for Avraham, it was 48 years of his life until he finally figured it out. And this is so important an idea, because what this teaches me is that faith is something worked on. Faith is something that develops. Faith in God is something that grows. And there's a beautiful passage in Rav Kook. This I didn't put on the source sheet, but Rav Kook bemoans the fact that people will have, as children, a beautiful innate sense of relating to God. I don't know if you've ever spoken to a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old. They have the best questions about God. They're curious. They wonder. My 5-year-old said, I think it was recently, do we live inside of God? And I said to them, oh my God. I said, oh my God. But oh my God, do we live inside of God? That's such a deep question. There are Kabbalistic works that deal with this very question. My 5-year-old, but all 5-year-olds get it. They have an innate sense of wondering and thinking about godliness. And Rav Kook says, we lose that. We become, he doesn't use this language, this is my language, we become infected We become infected with a terrible virus. It's not the coronavirus. What's our infection? Old age, adulthood. Because you take a teenager or a 20-year-old or a 40-year-old, and as that 5-year-old grows up, they lose that sense of wonder. They lose that sense of curiosity with the world. It's amazing. And Rav Kook says, what a shame that children lose that. And what are we left with? We're left with adulthood with a 4-year-old, 5-year-old sense of godliness. And that really is a shame. Can we continue thinking about God all throughout our lives, just like Abraham does, according to this, at the age of 48, and then only begins his journey at the age of 75? Let me finish with one last source, and this is Maimonides. Maimonides tells a very different story. This is, I'm not going to read it inside. You'll look in the source sheet. The source sheet is posted on my Facebook page, and if you're viewing this video later, the source sheet is also sent out with the weekly Beth Tikva email. Maimonides says that Abraham began contemplating God as a young child, and growing up in an idolatrous reality. It was only many years later that he would then, at the age of 40, go on to discover his creator. And this is a beautiful source, because what Maimonides is suggesting is that it's both, actually. It's the 3 years of age, it's the 48 years of age, it's both. There is an innate inquisitiveness at the age of childhood. And what Avram was able to do was continue that curiosity, that fascination. He was able to encourage that active religious interest in exploring to find who his creator was. And I find this the most mature approach. It's a beautiful approach. It's a synthesis and a harmony of both of them. We're all, as children, connected. Can we maintain and build and encourage that throughout our lives? And I would like to leave you with the following. Can you today, however old you may be, articulate your own personal sense of godliness, of what God is and what God means to you, in a way that is different today than it was when you were a 4-year-old? And I think that's a really important exercise for all of us to be engaged in. And if we can do that, then we can literally be walking in the footsteps of Abraham, creating and nurturing and building a relevant and contemporary and mature understanding of who God is, what God is, how he is engaged in our lives for today, and not based on our childlike conceptions. That's our session for today. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Wishing you all an early Shabbat Shalom.